Lovecraft is the great-grandfather, the great-great-grandfather of modern horror. He created an entire subgenre of horror, cosmic horror, in and unto itself. He coined that, he created that. But sadly, so few movies now are Lovecraftian. We're starting to get more and more, but the really good ones, or the ones which embrace the more cosmic nature, the Lovecraftianisms, always tend to come from indie movies or indie directors and indie studios. And that's what we're going to be taking a look at today. This is going to be my review of The Beach House, a very good Lovecraft horror. Now, I would say that very specifically. I wouldn't say that it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea as a movie or even just as a horror movie, but it's a very good Lovecraft film. So we're going to be reviewing that today in non-spoilers as well as spoilers. It is written and directed by Jeffrey A. Brown. It stars Lana Liberato, Noah LaGrosse, Jake Weber, and Marianne Nagel, or Nagel. And it's a very tight film. Very, very tight film. Now, I will say, let's take a look at kind of what I really enjoyed. Let's take a look at what makes Lovecraft Lovecraft. And there will be some people that disagree. I know, I get that. We all kind of have our own sort of terminologies for these things. But I would say what makes a good Lovecraft story, so not necessarily a film, but a good Lovecraft story, is the complete ambiguity. Cosmic horror has to be beyond human comprehension. And they do that very well in this film, I think, personally. Now, again, we'll get into it a little bit more in a moment, but yeah, cosmic sort of ambiguity and the fear of the unknown is definitely there. I think Lovecraft is one writer that treads a very good line between the characters that we see, the point of view characters that we see the story through or the world through. They tread a very fine line between being insane and the actions that they're narrating actually being the truth, i.e., a cosmic power of Cthulhu or something like that. Lovecraft has always done did do a very good job at that, and that's what this film does as well. Now, the way that they instigate this is not necessarily all to my liking, and that's where we start to get into the tropes that I wasn't such a fan of. But I will say, and like I said at the start, it's a very good Lovecraft film. They round it out very, very well, and although some of the tropes I dislike, on a whole, I could highly recommend this film. So let's get into the nitty gritty of it. Basically, it's a couple. They go to their beach house, right? Duh, it's titled The Beach House. Beach house has got to be in there somewhere, hasn't it? So they go to their beach house. They're a couple experiencing some issues. It's a trope that, I understand. I get why they include it in certain movies. It's a little bit lazy, but again, it's not terrible here. The execution wasn't terrible. So basically, they go to their beach house. They're trying to get away for a little bit, a good weekend where they can talk and just kind of sort through some bits and pieces. And you start to get a feel for these characters. They definitely have some issues. I mean, it's out and out stated in the script, but that's a little bit further down the line. And they then encounter some people in this beach house that potentially shouldn't be there. And then things go astray from there. Now, a few things to note about the story and the characters and the pacing. The story is good pacing. It's an 88-minute film, if I remember rightly, so just over 1 hour 20. And the actors were a little bit wooden at the start, in terms of the couple, their interaction, but they weren't atrocious. You settle into it a little bit and you start to realize, that's probably why, because they're having some issues as a couple, and they settle into it quite nicely. Now, the cinematography, as you can see actually from this picture that I have next to me, is beautiful, and I want to touch on this specifically. In this frame, and it's not perfect, but it's near perfect. We talk about the rule of thirds, right? And how you segment a frame up and how you can kind of frame a film. This is a very good shot. Very, very, very good. And it's not just this one shot either. So we have this one. Again, the rule of thirds. This is actually a frame from the film. Beautiful, vivid colours, yet muted somewhat. So the colour grading was very on point. And what I mean by muted somewhat, you can see more deep blues at the top, and then as they get closer to her face, as she's leaning, laying down, obviously there's some cloud cover there. But it's so beautifully done. And again, the framing, the rule of thirds, literally half the frame is one thing, half is another. It just works fantastically well. It's genuinely impressive. So the cinematography was really, really good. And this one, again, no spoilers specifically, but I want to talk about this as well, because, if we're having a look at this, the rule of thirds, not necessarily applying here, but the use of bokeh, very, very good. You can see sort of washed out colour, not washed out, but blurred out, vibrant, cosmic colours in the background. It sets it off really nicely. And although some of the blacks in this film I felt were washed out, kind of blown out a little bit, overall cinematography was really, really good. Like really, really nice to look at. And this is what I find a lot with indie directors nowadays, is that they are bringing something, to the forefront that other people just aren't. I mean, again, look at this. Really, really nice. Most directors would probably feel a bit ashamed, or, well, I don't know, feel it's too big a risk to do certain framing of, of their shots and kind of composition and things like that. But it works really, really well here. I genuinely really liked it, and I thought it came across. Great. I was really, really impressed with it. Now, in terms of other things that make, a good Lovecraft film, I think the unexplained, the hints here and there, and I kind of covered it in Cosmic Horror, but it's, it's something which, again, it is all too often flaunted at the end. They kind of just go, to hell with it, we'll just explain it away. And I thought they did a very good job at treading that fine line between explaining some things to keep the audience happy, and then, closing with some complete ambiguity at the end. It was very, very well done. So again, actors, not the best, but not terrible. Very engaging when you realise that there was some woodenness between them, because of course they are experiencing some problems. I really enjoyed the distinct lack of music in this film, because they used music to they were almost reluctant to use music. And I liked that, because I thought, I think it's brave when someone goes, we're going to leave complete silence and just sound floor. We're just going to do a sound floor on a sound canvas, right? We're just going to do that. The basic sound design, rather than fill it with music. And I think there's something brave in that. I'm sure you'll agree if you start to think about it. There's very few movies that actually do that. And again, it starts to come from more indie directors nowadays, whereas it used to come from most people. But yeah, again, indie directors seem to be the ones to watch out for. It was very, very well made. Very well made. It had some genuine tension throughout. I wouldn't say it was expertly crafted, but there were some genuinely eerie moments here. Let down by some tropes. Again, let down by some tropes, but it, again, wasn't bad. It overall rounded itself out to a very, very satisfying film. Now, in terms of other elements that I really liked, they had a good recurring theme of almost primordial gas, sort of gaseous material and particulates and things like that. And I really enjoyed that recurring theme throughout the film. It wasn't done expertly all the time, like some of the montages that they did were, not the best, but overall I really liked it, and I really liked that callback, this consistent theme throughout the film. I like the fact that they dropped in elements of this lady's sort of schooling and how that paired it up. Somewhat coincidental here and there, but again, it's fine. It's one of those things which is definitely forgivable. In terms of what I also liked, before we touch on the bad, because again, I'm kind of praising this film a lot, but I really did enjoy it. I watched it with my coffee this morning, and I had a really good time. One of the other things that I really liked was the depiction of succumbing to something, whether it was drugs or other things. I liked that. They had a really good I don't know whether it's in camera effect or not. It was difficult. I think it was just editing, to be fair, in post production. But kind of wavy kind of camera scenes and stuff like that. People kind of falling around and the sort of colours being blurred, and I liked that. I thought it was good. It was a good way to depict it. As much as then we go on to what I didn't like was the fact that I don't like the sort of implication behind people going insane to be drugs. I think that's a lazy way. You know, oh, there's kids, therefore they must take drugs. I don't know. I think that's very lazy. That's one of the tropes that I don't like about this film. But like I said, overall, it rounded itself out really nicely. Genuinely, really, really nicely. So as much as I didn't like that trope, the nature of just adding drugs in and using that as a vehicle to get people to go insane in a film, I did like the sort of way that they ended up and how they kind of continued down that path. Now, the other elements that I didn't really like overall, again, just the trope of, you know, a brooding couple arguing. I do think it's a trope. I do think it's overdone. I do feel like it is somewhat lazy here and there, but I get why they did it. Like I understand it's a very tight cast, and some of the things that overall I liked it. I would highly recommend it. Genuinely, it was a good film. So to touch on some spoilers now, so this is your kind of spoiler warning, although side note, if you choose to leave here at this part of the review, then please do hit subscribe and please do give the video a like, because obviously you've stayed this long. I mean, it's been 11 minutes now, so you clearly liked the review this far anyway. And we'll touch on spoilers, right? So we'll touch on spoilers. Again, spoiler warning, fair spoiler warning here. I really liked Again, I don't like the fact that they implemented insanity via drug use. I do feel that's lazy, but I really liked where they went with it. Because again, you weren't overly sure. I mean, you kind of were sure that there was something else going on, but there was still always... I look at it in terms of who's the point of view character? Who are we seeing the world from? Well, we're seeing it through the eyes of this one woman. She could already be insane. She could have took the drugs and fell down further into insanity, right? That's definitely a real thing. However, the fact that they sort of ended up with these egg sacs on the beach and very Lovecraftian sort of tentacles going into them and things like this, it was really... I liked it. It was really well done. What practical effects they did have were well used. It wasn't overused. They very clearly knew the sort of confines of the budget that they had and what they could do with it, and it could be a director to look out for. I mean, he wrote and directed this, and it was a beautifully put together film. It just worked. Now, again, I wouldn't say that this is something that you would want to watch in a theatre or anything like that. It is very much an indie film, but it excels as an indie film, and I really like the fact that they were implying that, you know, if you listen to the radio, again, this is all spoilers, the radio at the end, that it wasn't the fog, although we thought it was, and it kind of wasn't the water, but we thought it was, but it kind of was the water. There was particulates, microbes in the water, and, you know, how it was in earth rocks and things like this, but it was, you know, life not as we know it, and all of this kind of stuff. I really liked it. So ambiguous. So ambiguous. I thought it was really well done. So if you have seen it, please do let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're new here, then please do hit subscribe, like I said already, and please do hit that like button. Again, I recommend this film. It's a good indie film, strong indie film. Thank you all so much for watching. I have been Mr. H. Take care.